Hello everyone and welcome to this recorded webinar on Erasmus Plus Key Action 1 Vet, Learner and Staff Mobility. My name is Daniela and together with my colleague Bethany we'll be delivering this pre-recorded webinar. The webinar is aimed at applicants looking to apply for funding under the decentralized strand of Key Action 1 known as Vet, Learner and Staff Mobility. The webinar will primarily focus on how to fill out the application form as well as some hints and tips to help you with the application process. So just to give you an overview of what this recording covers. I'll start by giving you a quick introduction to Key Action 1 Mobility for Vet, Learners and Staff and what funding is available. There have been some changes this year as well as that you will need to know about. The main focus on the session will be the application form, which is a new web application form. So even if you have applied before, it is important to review this section. We'll first talk you through what you need to do beforehand, then we will go through the application form together, filling out certain parts, showing you how to use the distance calculator while completing the form. Then we will round up the key points. Finally, we will mention the next steps and how to contact us for support in the run-up to the deadline. So, Key Action 1 in the field of vocational education and training. Key Action 1 provides opportunities for individuals to improve their skills, enhance their employability and gain cultural awareness through transnational mobility. Under Key Action 1, organizations can apply for funding to offer structured work study, work experience, job shadowing, training and teaching opportunities to staff and learners. In the VET sector, both learners and staff in vocational education and training, which I'll call VET going forward, can participate in mobility activities. As a basic overview, funding can be used to support apprentices and VET students who are undertaking vocational training within a VET organization. In respect of staff, funding can be used to support staff engaged in VET activities, including support staff, managers and guidance staff, as well as teachers and trainers working in the sending organization. VET learners or apprentices involved in initial VET, IVET, or VET staff or trainers involved in continuing VET, referred to as CVET, can undertake their mobility abroad in either a VET college or school, a company, or a combination of both, depending on their needs. IVET includes full-time students, part-time students, and anyone undertaking an apprenticeship, whereas CVET includes staff or trainers involved in any form of vocational education or training with the aim of improving or updating their knowledge and skills, or enabling them to continue with their professional development. Projects can be made up of both learner mobility and staff mobility, but you must demonstrate how the two activities fit with the wider objectives of the project. Key Action 1 Mobility for VET learners and staff is managed by the UK National Agency at ERasmus UK, which means we at ERasmus promote the call for proposals, select successful projects and monitor them throughout their life cycle. Now let's look into opportunities for learners in a bit more detail. Specific to learners, the funding can be used to support apprentices and VET students enrolled on an IVET program within a VET organization. Apprentices or vocational students who have recently completed their apprenticeship or course, that is VET graduates, can also benefit from this opportunity as long as they undertake their training placement within 12 months of their graduation. The placement must include work-based learning at a VET organization, employer, or other relevant organization. Please note that vocational study alone is not permitted. To ensure the quality of the placement, it is recommended the receiving organization hosts all or part of the vocational placement rather than sourcing it out to another organization. The placement must be relevant to and fit well with the course that a student or apprentice is studying. It is important to note that in the Erasmus Plus program, vocational learners are defined as those whose studies typically include work-based learning. Higher education students are not eligible to benefit from Key Action 1 VET mobilities and should access Erasmus Plus through higher education mobility projects. If you are unsure whether your planned cohort of participants would be eligible under Key Action 1 VET, please contact the National Agency for Support. Learning outcomes should also be formally recognized through the use of ECVET, Europass, or through any other means that is appropriate to the target learners. The placement must last a minimum of 2 weeks or 12 days, of which 10 must be working days, and a maximum of 12 months, excluding travel time. Now a few words on accompanying persons. As part of the European Commission's drive to improve the quality of mobility experiences and safeguard vulnerable learners, it is compulsory to include accompanying persons for VET learner mobility projects. This means that each flow of learners must receive a visit from an accompanying person at some point during their mobility. This ensures that learners are properly monitored while on mobility and that any potential issues are picked up. We recommend that you include a minimum of 1 accompanying person per 10 learners. Accompanying persons can also accompany a single learner for the duration of their mobility, for example, if the learner has special needs. Accompanying persons are also allowed for staff mobility activities if a staff member has special needs. However, the inclusion of an accompanying person within a staff mobility must be fully explained in the application form. Now, the 2018 call saw the introduction of ErasmusPRO, which is a policy initiative to increase long-term mobility abroad for vocational education and training learners or recent graduates. It responds to calls by the European Parliament as well as companies and other VET stakeholders to increase the quality, the attractiveness and the employability of VET learners through long-term work placements abroad. Long-term placements abroad have proven a clear added value not only to reinforce the general skills acquired during the mobility experiences, but also providing them with an opportunity to acquire job-specific skills. Long-term mobility has advantages not only for boosting the employability of participants through enhanced individual skills, but also as a means to improve the overall performance of the organizations involved in such practices by developing sustained internationalization strategies while also helping business find the right skills they need to increase their competitiveness. To promote Erasmus Pro mobilities in projects, the integration of long-term mobilities forms part of the quality criteria against which your application will be assessed under all 3 award criteria, which I will cover later in this webinar. Please see page 55 of the 2019 program guide for further information. If you decide to include long-term mobilities in your proposal, and that is between 3 months to 12 months, you should take care to highlight how such mobilities will be managed. For example, how participants will be prepared, monitored and mentored for the longer mobility duration as opposed to participants on short-term mobilities of less than 3 months. For example, a participant on a long-term mobility may require more detailed preparation than a participant on a mobility of 3 weeks, where an accompanying person will be present. The recruitment and selection of participants for a long-term mobility would also need to be considered. If you're planning to integrate Erasmus Pro mobilities into your proposal, you can request funding for a short advanced planning visit for staff involved in the organization of the Erasmus Pro activities and in a working relation with the sending organization or consortium member to visit a host partner in order to facilitate interinstitutional cooperation, better prepare the mobilities and ensure their high quality. That is, in order to arrange the logistics of Erasmus Pro mobilities. The eligibility criteria for this is outlined on page 54 of the 2019 program guide and explains that the duration of a visit can be a maximum of 3 working days, excluding travel time. Each APV is limited to one participant, that is one staff member only, and only one APV may be carried out per hosting organization. Further support and guidance is provided within the Key Action 1 VET guide for applicants. The national agency will also provide beneficiary with the opportunity to discuss their proposal or idea for 30 minutes by telephone towards the end of December and in January, where you can discuss what you have put in place for Erasmus Plus mobilities, if applicable. This opportunity will be announced through our e-newsletter, so if you have not already signed up for this, please do so on our website. You will need to complete and submit a short form. Specific to VET staff, there is the opportunity to undertake two main types of mobility activities. The first is teaching and training assignments, where staff deliver training in a VET organization abroad. This also encompasses hosting a trainer or teacher from a partner organization to deliver structured training at the applicant organization or its consortium partner. You can also have staff from your European partner organization come to the UK under this activity type, so you can host them. The second activity type is staff training. Staff undertake a work placement or job shadowing experience in an enterprise or any other VET organization abroad. In the case of teaching or training assignments, Key Action 1 is open to persons from enterprises, the public sector, and/or civil society organizations, as well as to the typical target group of VET trainers, managers, and support staff. The training must respond to clearly identified staff development or training needs, or must contribute to your organization's strategic approach on making your training provision more modern or international. The learning outcomes of the training must also be appropriately recognized and shared widely with others in your organization. Staff mobility activities can last from 2 days to 2 months, excluding travel time, and must be consecutive. It is important to note that Erasmus Plus funding cannot be accessed by individuals, so an organization must apply on behalf of the participants it plans to include in the project. For your Key Action 1 VET application to be eligible, you must have at least one receiving partner, and you must list all of the proposed partners, receiving and intermediary organizations as applicable in the application form, as partners cannot be added at a later date. There are various roles that participating organizations play in the implementation of a VET learner and staff mobility project. I will outline these and the responsibilities that each one should undertake. Firstly, we'll talk about the applicant organization. This organization is in charge of applying for the mobility project and, if this is successful, signing and managing the grant agreement and reporting. The applicant can be a single organization or the coordinator of a national mobility consortium of partner organizations from the same country, aimed at sending VET learners and staff on mobilities abroad. The National Mobility Consortium coordinator can also act as a sending organization. The sending organization is in charge of selecting VET learners or staff and sending them abroad. This can be the applicant organization or its partners in the UK consortium, as I mentioned just now. The receiving organization is in charge of receiving foreign VET learners or staff and offering them a program of activities or benefiting from a training activity provided by VET staff. We recommend that your receiving organizations host all or part of the placement, so in that way you can better ensure the quality of the training which takes place abroad. If your receiving partner is hosting no part of the vocational placement, you should provide details on their suitable experience and expertise, as well as their links to businesses, industry, or training or institutions. Finally, an intermediary organization is one active in the labour market or in the field of VET. It is a partner in a national VET consortium, but is not a sending or receiving organization. Its role may be to share and facilitate the administrative procedures of the sending VET organizations and to better match apprentice or student profiles with the needs of enterprises and to jointly prepare participants. It is important to link your Key Action 1 project to the overarching European priorities and show the added value of carrying out your project on a European level. When doing so, it is important to keep the general objectives of the Erasmus Plus program in mind, as well as the important features of the program. The general objectives of Erasmus Plus is to contribute to a number of policies, which are those you can see on this slide. The objectives are covered in Part A of the Erasmus Plus program guide, and more information can be found of the following important features of the Erasmus Plus program. The Europe 2020 strategy, including the headline education target. The strategic framework for European cooperation in education and training. The sustainable development of partner countries in the field of higher education. The renewed framework for European cooperation in the youth field 2010 to 2018. The objectives of developing the European dimension in sport, in particular grassroots sport, in line with the European Union Work Plan for Sport, and the promotion of European values in accordance with Article 2 of the Treaty on the European Union, which include human dignity, freedom, democracy and equality. The important features of Erasmus Plus are detailed in Part A of the program guide and include recognition of skills and multilingualism. Please look through them carefully in your own time. Please also have a look at the specific objectives for the field of education and training on page 31 of the program guide. I will now be covering more specific information about preparing before completing and submitting the actual application form. Now, once you have decided on your Key Action 1 VET project idea, you have found partners and thought about how to address different European priorities, you will need to ensure that you have obtained a PIC for your organization before applying. This is a 9-digit participant identification code which is unique to your organizations and will help you complete the application form. Also, you need to make sure that all the details of your organization are correct on the European Commission's participant portal. If you haven't got a PIC, you need to complete 2 registration steps, but please double check that your organization definitely doesn't have a PIC. We'd recommend you ask colleagues at your organization in case someone else has already created a PIC. If your organization already has a PIC, you should use that one and not create a new one, as having 2 or more PICs for the same organization will create problems. If you need to create a PIC, these are the 2 steps that you need to follow. First, you will need to register on EU Login First. This platform of the European Commission was formerly known as ECUS, and it changed its name, but its function is essentially the same. EU Login is a point for user authentication or to a wide range of Commission tools. The registration process is really simple, and you can download a guide on our website which will talk you through how to do this. This is in the Before You Apply section, and you will find the link to it on our website. You will then need to obtain a PIC through the participant portal. The participant portal is the single entry point for the electronic administration of Erasmus Plus projects, as well as projects funded under other EU programs. After starting the registration process, you will be prompted to provide information about your organization, as well as upload documents related to your organization. These documents are needed to prove the legal status and financial capacity of your organization, and it is essential that the information on these documents matches the information you've input on the portal. If you're creating a PIC, make sure you register onto the correct participant portal. The link provided on our website is for the Education, Audiovisual, Culture, Citizenship and Volunteering portal, which is the correct one. However, if you were simply to search on the internet, you might come across the Research Participant portal, which is not the correct portal for Erasmus+. Please be aware that all of your partners will also need to have obtained a PIC and have uploaded all of the necessary supporting documents on the participant portal before you can submit your application. This is because the details of all the participating organizations will be pulled into the application form from the participant portal and cannot be completed manually. We'll see how this actually works in a minute. So let's start with how to log in. On this slide, you will see the link to the web form, the web application web form, which you will need to complete. To open the application, you need to click on the link to the Erasmus Plus Forms website, which takes you to the EU login screen. You will find this on our website under Apply for VET funding page. Log in using your EU login details. You will then be redirected to the homepage page that looks like the one you see on the screen. You will notice 5 main tabs named Field of Opportunity, which will show all key actions from where you will choose the appropriate application form. You will also notice the tab My Applications at the top of the page. Here you should see any applications which you have already started or finalized. Please click on Vocational Education and Training tab, and once you've identified the correct application form, select Apply. Once you have clicked Apply, a welcome message will appear. Please read this carefully as it gives you important information on some of the form functions. Each time you click on Apply, a new draft of the application will be created and saved there. Therefore, if you have multiple application drafts saved, ensure you open and edit the correct one. Bear in mind that the application is saved automatically every 2 seconds. There is therefore no option to save the form, and you must ensure you're connected to the internet at all times. I will now hand over to my colleague Bethany, who will be covering more specific information about preparing and submitting the application form.
Okay, thank you. So after you finish with the pre-application steps, you can move on to the application form itself. So the application form will need to be submitted online by the applicant organisation by the deadline. Please do keep in mind that this is the 11 AM UK time, as the deadline for applications is 12 PM Brussels time, so there's that hour difference there. You must access the Key Action 102 application through the Erasmus Plus Forms website, which we're just looking at now. And you can find the link to the website along with our guide for applicants on the Apply for Vocational Education and Training funding page on the website as well, as we have just heard. To make sure you're working on the correct Key Action 1 application form, you should check the areas that you can see at the top of the application form there. So in the top right-hand corner, the form should state 2019 as the call year and the specific key actions such as the action type. So it's call 2019, round 1, key action 1, learning mobility of individuals, key action 102 or KA 102, vet learner and staff mobility. You'll also see that there's the correct deadline for the specific round as well. So now we'll go into the actual application form and run this through with you. So now we're on an application form that we have prepared a little bit for this. So as we go through it, we'll use the guide on the left to go between the relevant sections of the form. I'm just going to concentrate on hints and tips for each section. This is just based on previous application rounds rather than describing all the information needed. And then I'll concentrate on the sections dealing with project activities and budget, just to show how they link to each other. Please remember that you can find more detailed guidance on each section of the application form in our guide for applicants, which you can download from our website under the Apply for Vet Learner and Staff Mobility Funding page. And also the 2019 programme guide is a really useful resource that you can use to help you when applying. And this can be found under application resources on our website. So I'll give you a brief introduction to some of the key features. So each section of the application form is displayed on that menu. Once all the mandatory fields in a given section have been completed correctly, the section can be marked with a green tick icon. If there's any information missing in a section, or if not all the application rules have been respected, for example, a section will be marked with a red exclamation triangle icon, which is what you can see on the left there now. Most individual questions will be marked in the same way, just to make it easy to identify and fix any issues. Pre-filled sections of the form, which you can see here in context is project end date, which will be pre-filled, are grey, and they can't be amended in the web form. So you can see there it automatically populates. Cells that don't have red next to them should be completed where possible and applicable, and this here is like the project acronym there. Mandatory sections of the form are in red, so you must complete these sections to be able to submit the web form. You can see in this context part of the form, we have to provide the language used to fill out the form, which in this case should always be English when you're submitting the form to the UK National Agency. So we can go to the bottom and select English. So as you saw, we have to use a drop-down box to select this. The drop-down feature can be found throughout the form, and in some cases it appears when you click on any kind of cell. So for example, we can click on the start date, and that drops down into a calendar. Do please note that the form automatically fills in the project start date as the 1st of June 2019. You can change this if you wish, but the start date for your 2019 project must be between the 1st of June 2019 and the 31st of December 2019. Please note that the National Agency does suggest a start date later than the 1st of June, just because it can take at least 4 months from application for your grant agreement and any pre-financing payments to be made. When deciding your start date, also consider when you'll be able to recruit participants and the availability of your staff within your own and other participating organisations. So as you can see, you then select the project duration. Ensure that the project duration selected is realistic for the project you're applying for. This is a total duration for your whole project and not just for the proposed mobilities, and you will need to encompass all project-related activities from promotion through to evaluation and dissemination within that. Once the duration is input, as we saw, the end date of the project automatically populates. So in this same section, as we've already done, you must select the UK 01 British Council in partnership with the Chorus UK British Council, which is the national agency. That's the UK national agency there. And it is right at the bottom of the drop-down menu. Okay, so now that context is finished, we can move on to participating organisations. So here are some hints and tips. If you are applying as a consortium, you need to select yes from this drop-down box. This will bring up an extra box further on down saying consortium, where you have to enter your consortium members. There is also an extra question, so if you are involved in another consortia, select yes from this box and explain further about this. Remember that all members of the consortium must be from the same programme country, and they need to be identified at the time of applying for a grant. A consortium must comprise of at least 3 vet organisations, so that'll be you and at least 2 other UK organisations. Please also make sure that all consortium members have an eligible legal form at the application stage. Please note that once you've selected yes to applying on behalf of a consortium, there are extra questions specific to being in a consortium and running the project that will appear throughout the form, and you should see them today. Remember, when you put in any PIC numbers, the information will automatically populate. And this information comes from the participant portal. Here, as you can see, we've just entered the PIC for a test applicant organisation. It automatically has loaded the legal name and the country there. In order to check the applicant organisation name, you can click the organisation and then you're taken to this screen. Check the details, and if you notice that anything is incorrect for you or your partners, they'll need to be corrected in the participant portal. There is also a profile section here that you do need to fill out, which includes the type of organisation, the number of staff, number of learners as well. You can see here that you do need to add a contact person and a legal representative as associated persons. So to do this, you need to click on the button with the 3 horizontal lines to the right, and then you select person's details. And you fill that out as necessary. So when you go back to participating organisations, and you go back into your applicant organisation, you can see that you can add an associated person. This is recommended so that your organisation can remain in contact with the UK National Agency in cases where the preferred contact person is absent or unavailable for whatever reason. So here you can see it's our first question of the application form, which is a background and experience of the applicant organisation. So just a little tip, a better quality application will be specific and detailed in all questions answered in the form. So try to use SMART goals when completing the application form, and this stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic and timely. So for this question here, explain how your organisation's previous experience of delivering projects or activities has built the skills and knowledge needed for the activities you propose in the application. And do please name the key persons who will be delivering this project and their skills. There is also the extra question if you are a consortium, so do remember to answer that if needed. Okay, so you can go back to the participation organisations screen again. And we can look at our partner, hosting partner organisation. So we're personally not a consortium. So we would answer no to those. We answered yes, so you could see. But we can add in our hosting partner organisation PICs here. So if your hosting organisation does not have a PIC, you can click those 3 dots and manually enter it, but we do have PICs for ours, so we can just click add hosting partner and add our second one there. Do make sure that all the details are correctly filled for your hosting partners, and this is including the type of organisation. You can check this by just clicking the organisation name, and you can check the details within there. The only thing you need to amend on here if it's not correct, well, if everything's correct, sorry, is the type of organisation. And then that's complete for the details. And again, to add more partners, you can add the hosting partner button. But do remember, for your application to be eligible, you will need to enter at least 1 hosting partner. As you can see, the UK consortium partners are added in that same way. And the option to add their details will only be visible if yes is selected to the question above, which, as you just saw, that's what comes up. So once our participating organisations are complete, and obviously you would have entered your contact persons, then we can move on to European Development Plan. So, sorry, just before we go into detail on this page, you can see that at the bottom of any boxes that require you to explain something, there's a count that shows how many characters are written in this box, and then the character limit. So if we write something in the first box, you can see it turns to 4 out of 3,000 for that first question. So the purpose of the European Development Plan is basically to ensure that the plan mobility activities are relevant both to the needs of the individual participants and of your organisation as a whole. So it's also to ensure that the activities will have a positive impact on the quality of teaching and learning provided by the applicant organisation or the consortium partners here in the UK. Finally, when completing this section, you should demonstrate that the proposed activities tie in with the organisations or consortium's wider European and international strategy. Please see the guide for applicants for more information on completing this section if you require. So if we scroll to the bottom of the screen, you can see that you can note that you can select up to 3 of the most relevant topics from that drop-down menu there, and you can select them by just clicking on them, and you can deselect by clicking them again. This feature can also be found in other parts of the web form as well. Okay, so just a few hints and tips around this. Do make sure that you show a clear link with the priorities and objectives of Key Action 1, and these are detailed on pages 26 to 32 of the 2019 programme guide. You should also think about which of the general objectives for education and training are relevant. These are listed in Part B of the programme guide as well. Explain the specific needs or issues your project will address based on a genuine needs analysis you or others have carried out in relation to the participants and organisations you plan to involve. Also, describe the specific needs of your participants and organisations and show how your project will respond to these. It is really important that you demonstrate how the learners and or staff you will select to take part in activities will benefit directly from this project. Okay, so we can move on to the project management section. So in this section, you should just explain clearly how you will ensure that the project and the grant are managed effectively and transparently in order to deliver the planned objectives and activities to a high standard and within the time frame and the budget available. And this is including how you and your hosting partners or your consortium, if that's applicable, will work together to achieve this. You should detail the communication methods you'll use with your partners and how you will ensure that roles and responsibilities of each participating organisation are clear. Describe how you'll address the practical and logistical matters, and this can be like travel and accommodation, etc. And if applicable, you should also describe how you'll use any of our online platforms as part of your project, for example, the Erasmus Plus Project Results Platform, which is our dissemination tool. So once this has been completed, we can move on to the activities, which is an important part of this application form. It's really important because this feeds directly into the budget summary section later on. So all the information inputted here needs to be accurate and realistic for your project. The activities are split up into activity type, as you can see in this list of activities here. And you should only enter activities for the activity types that you would like. If you're applying for ErasmusPRO and you wish to carry out an advanced planning visit, as we mentioned earlier on, this is where it will be recorded. Okay, so the activities description, this question is basically just referring to the hosting partners and therefore the receiving countries and how this relationship will be or has been formed. So make sure it's clear what your hosting partners' expertise are and why you're working with them. Once you've entered participants into one of the activities below, additional questions will be visible in this section here. just under the activity description. So this is depending on whether your project includes learners or staff. We'll see this as we start to add activities in this application form today. So don't forget, you need to select yes or no if your project will involve an intermediary organisation. And for more information on that, you can look in our guide for applicants and programme guide. So moving on to this list of activities that I mentioned. The activities that are listed here are mobility of vet learners, which is our 2 weeks to 3 months activity. We also have the ErasmusPRO, which is mobility of vet learners, our 3 months to 12 months. This is our long-term mobility option. The advanced planning visits, and these can only be used for ErasmusPRO mobility activities. Our teaching and training assignments abroad. This is the activity you should select if you're planning on hosting in the UK, as well as sending staff abroad to train, and our staff training abroad as well. So this table that is on the list of activities back there will update as activities are added, and we'll show you that when we've finished with this activity. So our first one, as you can see, is mobility of vet learners that we would like. So the first thing you need to do when you get to this page is fill in how many participants are requiring a grant and how many are not. So we have 20 requiring a grant and 0 not requiring a grant here. Participants are referring to learners and not accompanying persons. So funding for accompanying persons can be claimed further down this form. And please also remember to fill in which of those participants will be hosted by schools or companies. So we would have to enter 20 into either school or company here. So as you can see, we've only entered 19 into school, and there's an error there that will come up to say that you haven't put enough in. So if we put 20 into school, that error will delete. And those errors come up all the way through the web form. That's just an example of what you might see. So we'll move on to individual support here. So in order to find out which group your countries come under, you can hover over the question marks next to the groups. It's important you select the correct group since they each have different daily grants. So I'm searching for France, and this comes under group 2. So I can enter the number of participants necessary next to group 2. If participants under the same activity type are going to multiple receiving countries, all of them can be recorded on the same table, but here we are just sending them to France. So our average duration per participant, we're going to say 12 for this one. Remember, for vet learner mobility, for this activity and not ErasmusPRO, it needs to be between 10 and 91 days, and that can be including travel. And please note that you can request additional individual support for up to 1 travel day before and 1 after the activity, so 2 travel days maximum. Your estimated grant for individual support will appear on the bottom right of this table. Under this table, there's the option to request individual support for accompanying persons. So we would like accompanying persons, so we select yes, and then you can see that a new table appears. So here you can record the country group and the average days of duration for the accompanying person. And we want to send 3 participants to France as well, which we already know is in group 2. And because they're going for 12 days, these can be going for 5, let's say. So now we can move on to travel, now that we've got their individual support. So in order to fill this section out, you will need to use the Commission's online distance calculator. So a link to this is provided in the guide for applicants. The distance is from cities and towns, so choose the nearest one to your head office and the head office of your host partner. So the distance that comes up corresponds with a band, which you'll need to use to input the number of persons next to. And you do remember that this includes your accompanying persons too. This will then automatically populate the corresponding travel unit costs in the budget section, but we can look at that in a minute. So do remember that this is a contribution towards the return journey costs, and ensure that you put in the right band, as this will be checked at assessment. And if this is incorrect, you could affect the quality of the application. So within the distance calculator, we're going to L'Église-aux-Bois in France. So we've put Birmingham as our departure point, and we've put L'Église-aux-Bois as our endpoints. You do have to be careful, as you can see, because it comes up with different options. So you have to make sure you click the correct option in order to get the correct place. And you can see that the options come up underneath, and you have to click it in order for it to work. So this shows us that the distance is 805.48 kilometres. So this does fall into the 500 to 1,999 kilometre band. So when we go back to the application form, you can see that band there, which is number 3. So our test organisation, as you saw, was based in Birmingham, and our receiving organisation was in L'Église-aux-Bois. So once they've both been selected, you need to use this distance band and put in the amount of participants that you would like. So here we would like 23, because it's all of our participants, and it's our accompanying persons as well. So you can record those in this box. Just a quick note, if you don't wish to claim any costs for travel, you can just leave the section with zeros. But do be reminded that if you do input less persons here than you have earlier on in the form, a yellow warning will appear just to ensure that this is intentional. So do make sure you're filling out this form with care. Okay, so once again, on the travel table, you can see the estimated grant total in the bottom right corner of the table. Just underneath there is the option to request exceptional costs for expensive travel. These exceptional costs may only be requested if you're travelling from or to somewhere that is remotely located, and justification can be provided to show that the standard funding given per distance band would not cover at least 70% of the travel costs of participants. So if you do add cost, then you see that this comes up and you have to put in your description and justification. This can't be used in combination with the normal travel grant for the same person. So you can request either the standard unit cost, which we did on the distance calculator, or the expensive travel cost. Please remember that for expensive travel costs of participants, the EU grant will cover up to 80% of the actual cost. So be careful here, and note that in the application form, you should enter the grant amount requested, corresponding to the percentage allowed. So you can only enter maximum 80% of the total cost you have calculated. Again, more information on this can be found in the programme guide and guide for applicants. Okay, so if we go down to linguistic support, this linguistic support is only available for VET learners on mobilities lasting 19 days to 12 months. So here, you should indicate how many participants will use the languages which are offered by OLS Language, which is our online linguistic support. And if the project is approved, then these participants will need to undertake language assessments before and after the mobility abroad through OLS. Unit cost funding may be available for the linguistic support offered to participants prior to departure or during the activity, and there are a few scenarios. So placements lasting between 19 days and 12 months using any one of the languages that OLS can support you with, and this is detailed on this form as well as in our programme guide. The participants are required to use the OLS tools and licences, which will be allocated by the UK National Agency if your project is successful. You'll be awarded no unit cost here, as support will be provided via OLS. Funding from organisational support should be used to absorb any additional costs incurred. So placements lasting between 19 days and 12 months, not using any of the OLS languages. So again, you can see this on this form and on our programme guide. Participants should have some language training provided as part of their preparation activities. So once you input the number of participants using these languages, the application will allocate a unit cost of €150 per participant. And this is payable to enable you to arrange linguistic preparation. So this could be a language tutor, for example. So for placements less than 19 days, which is like our placement, and it doesn't matter what language they're working in, no unit cost is payable. So funding from organisational support should be used to absorb any costs incurred to prepare participants in the language with which they will train or work. So again, for more information on this OLS platform, you can look in our programme guide, but there is also a link on the application form that you can follow. So right at the end of the page, you can see here, there is the budget summary. So just check that this is correct for this activity type. And once you think that's correct, we can go back up the page and click list of activities again. So you can see here that the learner mobility activities question has come up because we put in a learner mobility activity. So now we can click on ErasmusPRO. Okay, so again, we need to put in the number of participants that we would like requiring a grant, which this time we're going to say 10. And again, we need to check if they're going into schools or companies. So this time, our test receiving organisations are based in France and Finland. So we need to check what group countries they come under. So we can see that Finland is under group 1, and as we already know, France is under group 2. So since it says an ErasmusPRO mobility, we will put in, we can put in the number of participants going to each one, and our duration is different. So it has to be between 90 and 368 days. That's including the travel. So make sure that the grant estimate given seems realistic for your project and the duration seems realistic. So we will put 100 just to be round. And again, for group 2, we'll do the same for France. And once again, that question about accompanying persons is there. So we'll select yes. And we want 2 people going to Finland and 2 people going to France. So we'll add that in that way. And they'll just be going for 20 days. Okay, so once that's all complete, we can move on to travel again. So the receiving organisation for France, we know, is the same as before. So we'll do France first. So we know that's in the 500 to 1,999 kilometre because it's the same organisation. And we already know it's 805 kilometres. So we can enter our 5 participants definitely under that one first. For the next one, our next receiving organisation is based in Helsinki. So we need to open the distance calculator once more and change our endpoint to Helsinki. And this, as you can see, has been calculated as 1,844.7 kilometres. So if we go back to the application form, we can see that that also fits into the same bands. We can add our participants for Finland and also all of our accompanying persons in there as well. So it should be 14 participants overall. So when we go down now to linguistic support, seeing as this mobility is actually long enough to apply for the full linguistic support, we can input participants into the online linguistic assessment And this is because the languages that they're working with are Finnish and French, and both of them are supported by the OLS platform. Also, please do add exceptional costs for expensive travel if you wish, as we're doing here. And then we can carry on to our linguistic support. So do remember to request enough OLS licenses that can be used to enable language learning during the mobility. So we can now go back to the list of activities again once you've checked the budget summary. And because we have ErasmusPRO mobilities, we can request funding for an advanced planning visit. So we can click onto that activity type. And we just want one person going to each country. So in the individual support, we know that Finland is group 1 and France is group 2. So the duration is maximum 5 days, including travel. So that's including travel as well. So 3 days for the actual visit and 1 day either side. We don't need accompanying persons for this one. And we already know from the distance calculator that both L'Église-aux-Bois and Helsinki are in that 500 to 1,999 kilometre band. So you can enter those into there. Again, just check the budget summary if you need exceptional cost for expensive travel as well. And if you don't, then you can leave that and go back to the activities list. Okay, so for our final activity, we want to add teaching and training assignments abroad. So again, we just add the number of participants that we want requiring a grant. We're going to put this as 3 today, as you can see. And then we move straight down into the individual support. So these participants are going to Helsinki. They're going to go to Finland. So we already know again that this is group 1, so we can quickly fill this out. And the duration has to be between 2 and 62 days. So we'll put the duration as 10. So we can now move on to travel. If this was a different receiving city, obviously we would check with the distance calculator, but we know that it's Helsinki, so we know that we can put it into that distance band again. So it's just those 3 participants into the correct distance band there. Again, if you need to request any expensive travel costs, you can, and just check the budget summary, and then we can go back to the activities list. So you'll see here again that a staff question has now come up because we've added a staff mobility activity. So those questions you do need to keep a lookout for because they do pop up after you've put in an activity and after you've already described your activities, the first thing that you do when you get on there. So do look out for those. If we scroll to the bottom of the screen, we can see the organisational support. So this is automatically calculated, and this budget heading is only for participants and not accompanying people. So organisational support is used for organisation, management and implementation of your mobilities or main activities. And for more information on the organisational support rates and how it's worked out, you can see the programme guide. So just some general advice on the activities section. Do explain how the activities proposed in this application here for learners and or staff fit in with other programmes or activities that you deliver. This will help the assessors understand what needs and expertise your organisation has. And this would make it easier to see the potential impact of the project for your organisation. And also, when entering average durations, do make sure to look at the total number of days you're requesting, just to ensure that this is realistic for your organisation to deliver within the project duration that you selected. So now that our activities are complete, and obviously we would make sure that everything was green ticked, we can move on to participants. So in this section, we're just going to give you some hints and tips for this. So be specific about who your participants will be and how you'll select them. So, for example, if you're applying for vet learner mobility, include information on vet course of study that your learners will be undertaking, specifying the subjects and level of qualification with that, and how the placement will support this learning. So if you're selecting staff for mobility, how will you select the most relevant staff members? We've found this information unclear in applications unsuccessful in previous calls. Similarly, if you're including ErasmusPRO activities, you must specify why targeted participants are suited for long-term mobility, as well as how you'll select them. If you're including long-term and short-term mobilities, you should describe how the targeted participants and selection for each type of mobility differ. Do explain what recruitment and selection processes you and any partners will undertake. For instance, state how many participants you will involve and how the processes will ensure the most suitable participants are selected, whilst ensuring a fair process at the same time. In the case of staff mobility, you need to carefully detail the training that staff will deliver or receive, whether your UK organisation is sending or hosting staff. You should demonstrate how the training programme ties in with the needs analysis on your organisation's strategy. And we also recommend that you annex any specific materials relating to the proposed training to the application form to strengthen your case. Make sure that the placements match participants' training and/or professional development needs as stated in this section. And the participating organisation should work closely together to match the selected participants with suitable vocational placement. If applicable, do address how you will ensure your participants are eligible under the rules of Erasmus+. So, for example, in the case of recently graduated vet learners, how will you ensure that their placement takes place in the eligible time period, which for recently graduated vet learners is within 12 months of graduation. So if we go to learners, which is where we are now, you can check this section to make sure that the total number of participants inputted under each activity type is correct. And in the learners part, please enter the numbers of recent graduates, apprentices or fewer opportunity learners and learners with special needs. All boxes have to have a number inputted, but this number can be 0, of course. So now if we go to staff, we also need to input if any of the staff are with special needs, so we can put in a number there if that is applicable. And if there are any participants, learners or staff who do have special needs and you wish to request further funding for it, it's important that you input this information here, and this will allow you to request further funding in the special costs section, which is coming up next. So below here, as you can see, there are boxes referring to preparation, monitoring and support of participants during the project. So the specific activities mentioned in this section will depend on the objectives and activities of your particular project, and also obviously the needs of your participants. However, they will include some standard elements such as language and/or cultural preparation for participants, mentoring and support, especially for learner mobilities, practical and logistic orientation, any technical or vocationally specific training or preparation before particular activities, and agreeing learning needs and objectives with participants. So under that first preparation question, you'll need to describe the teaching, cultural and linguistic preparation that learners and staff will receive, just to ensure that they'll be ready to live and work in a different environment and in a different country. You'll need to identify whether it is the same for all participants, so for example, participants on short-term and long-term abilities, and be sure to explain how and when this preparation will take place. Who will it involve, for example, as well. Please remember, for learners completing mobilities which last between 19 days and 12 months, the European Commission's online linguistic support tool should be used as an online platform to support that language learning, as we spoke about before. Do address how you plan to handle risks or difficulties. For example, what processes will you use to handle conflict resolution within the partnership and to prevent selected participants dropping out of mobilities. And under that monitoring and support question, you need to explain what monitoring activities will take place to support your participants and who will carry these out and evaluate the participants' progress. So examples for this could be meetings between learners and accompanying persons during a short-term mobility, participant logbooks, regular Skype catch-ups between staff participants and their line manager back in the UK, for example. Monitoring for a long-term ErasmusPRO activity may be completely different to that of a short-term mobility, so please ensure that you make that distinction. If advanced planning visits are being requested, information about how the visit will be used to prepare for long-term mobilities should be included in this section here. So for the learning outcomes now, here you need to detail what is expected to be a result of the project in terms of learning outcomes. So the outcomes must also be clearly linked to the aims of your project and relevant to the needs of your participants. This means that they must be agreed with both the learners and staff of the sending and or receiving organisations. So now, right at the bottom of that screen, you can see that there is a part concerning the validation of learning outcomes of participants. So participants' training and skills acquired during the placement should be recognised, and you should consider involving European partners in the validation process. You'll need to detail within the application which European and or national instruments or certificates will be used to validate the competences acquired by participants. So as you can see here, you can select the certifications with that drop-down menu. And as a minimum, you should use Europass, but you could also consider incorporating ECVET, which is the European Credit Transfer System for VET. And this does allow you to validate the skills that participants gain whilst abroad against the knowledge, skills and competences that are required to achieve a qualification at home. So that is something to consider. So once you've completed all of that, you can move on to our special costs section. So firstly, as you can see, this section will allow you to request any special needs support. So this means any costs that your organisation or any partners will incur in relation to participants whose physical, mental or health-related situation is such that the participation in the project would not be possible without that extra financial support. So, for example, special needs funding could fund specialist equipment that one of your participants will need specifically to participate in those mobility activities. Special needs support is calculated on an actual cost basis, and this will be assessed case by case. Therefore, it's important that you make it clear in the description and justification box there what items you need and the cost breakdown. You should also be including the detail of the inclusion of special needs participants in the main narrative of the application. Please note the number of participants with special needs should be identified in the participants section first to allow costs to be added here. So secondly is our exceptional costs. So exceptional costs are budgeted as actual costs as well, and you'll need to clearly state in the description and justification box why you need these items and the cost breakdown. Under Key Action 1 Mobility Project for VET learners and staff, you can request exceptional costs funding for 3 areas. So additional costs to support the participation of learners with fewer opportunities. This is excluding the cost for travel and individual support. And costs connected to providing a financial guarantee if the national agency asks for that. And even though this isn't entered in this section, it is useful to know that the exceptional costs for expensive travel are also classed as exceptional costs. So as I explained previously, this means financial support can be claimed if applicants can justify that the normal travel cost unit cost, given per distance band does not cover at least 70% of the travel costs for participants. And if this is awarded, then the normal travel grant is replaced by this. Please note that if you do want to request that funding, it should be requested under the corresponding activity type in the activities section and not here. So please note that only a certain percentage of the exceptional costs you're budgeting for will be covered by the EU funding. For instance, the EU grant only covers 75% of the actual costs of financial guarantees. More information, again, is provided on this in the programme guide and in the handbook. So we can now move on to follow up. So here are some hints and tips about this section. You need to be as specific as possible about the impact of the project and addressing the needs and the objectives that you've identified earlier in the application. So the UK&A have created a model to help you think about the impact called Impact Plus, and the link for this model is provided in the guide for applicants. You need to describe the expected impacts on individual participants, the participating organisations, the target groups they work with, and any other relevant stakeholders. And please don't forget to specify the impact of the project at local, regional, national, European, and international level. Give specific details of the evaluation methods and indicators of achievement, both qualitative and quantitative. And these indicators of achievement that you plan to use in order to assess whether and to what extent your project has achieved its objectives and results. You should attach numerical targets to quantitative indicators wherever possible and explain who will be looking after this task. Don't forget your evaluation activities should consider the learning outcomes and how the project has contributed to addressing the overall aims of Key Action 1. You need to show you've carefully planned how you'll make the results of your project known and mention what messages you want to share, what activities you'll undertake to do this, and when. You should be as clear as possible about who you'll target with your dissemination activities as well. So do you plan for these activities to take place throughout the project lifetime and not just at the end? And please do have a look at Annex 2 of the programme guide, which provides more practical guidance on the sharing of results of your project. In previous call years, this section of the application form has been identified as the weakest. The impact and dissemination section of the award criteria is worth 30 points out of the maximum of 100 which can be awarded. So it is important. Please refer to the guide for applicants for more support on completing this section. And also the Erasmus Plus website has lots of information and resources for dissemination and impact. So once that's been completed, we can now move on to our budget summary. Getting the budget right is an important part of the application, as I'm sure you can imagine. And it's important that you've carefully considered and justified the budget that you're requesting. It's important to be aware that if the project is approved, the applicant organisation will receive the grant and will be responsible for distributing it amongst the partners to ensure the effective delivery of the project. There's no maximum grant amount for VET, learner and staff mobility projects. However, you should ensure that the budget requested meets the needs of the activities planned and is realistic. All budget costings are for sending participants, except under the activity teaching and training assignments abroad only, where you can claim costs to host a teacher or trainer to provide structured training to VET staff. So there are two funding mechanisms under Key Action 1 VET Mobility. The first is unit costs, and these are a set amount per participant, which is a contribution towards the cost. And on the other hand, there are actual costs. And an actual cost basically means that you'll receive the funding for how much you actually plan to spend. So these actual costs are used for exceptional costs and special needs support and can be fully or partly reimbursed. So the budget categories that we have for Key Action 1 VET learner and staff mobility are travel, individual support, organisational support, linguistic support, and that's only available for VET learners, not VET staff. And then we also have the extras. We have special needs support, that's if that's applicable, the exceptional costs, again, if it's applicable, and the exceptional costs for expensive travel, if you've requested those. So as you can see, this information underneath the budget summary there has been pre-filled based on the information that we've already entered in the activities section before. So travel, individual support, and organisational support are all unit costs. And as we said before, special needs, exceptional costs, and the exceptional costs for expensive travel are all actual costs. So the request for funding in travel should reflect the main activities you've detailed in the activities section, and check the request for individual support there too. So remember, this is a contribution to the subsistence costs of participants during their activity, and costs are calculated on a unit cost basis per participant, depending on the type of the activity, the duration, and the country where the activity will take place. If the estimated grant doesn't look correct, this can be amended in the activity section as we did before. Now you need to check the request for organisational support. So this is the money to be used for the organisation, management and implementation of your mobilities or main activities. And once again, this information is being pre-filled from the activity details section where it is pre-filled as well. So for special needs, if you want to request funding under this, you have to ensure that the grant that's given there is the grant that you would like to request. And again, this is calculated as an actual cost. And exceptional costs, do check that those costs are also accurate. Again, if they aren't, you can amend this in the special costs section and the budget summary will change. So now you can see the budget summary per activity type. This table breaks down the estimated grant for travel and individual support per activity type. So once again, just check that those estimated grants are looking realistic and as correct as you can possibly make them. For linguistic support, which is our next bit, this is a summary of what linguistic support has been requested. So if you have requested the OLS assessment or the OLS linguistic support, and that's for vet learner participants with mobility duration of 19 days to 12 months, this accounts for no monetary grant. Only working languages that are not covered by the European Commission's linguistic platform are eligible for that linguistic support grant. So just to reiterate a general piece of advice on the budget, make sure you've clearly described the main activities of your project and that the budget you request is consistent with your description, because budget requests can only be accepted if it's clear what the money is being requested for. So do make sure you're clear with that. And do remember that the Erasmus Plus grant is regarded as a contribution to your project costs and may not cover the total cost of your project. So once you're happy with your budget summary section, we can now move on to the project summary section. So this section basically is just asking you to provide a summary of your project. So the summary can be used by the Commission and the national agency in their publications, and this can also feed into the Erasmus Plus project results dissemination platform. So it should be written in clear, plain English, avoiding any technical or sector-specific jargon. And that's just to ensure that it can be understood by the general public. Ensure to include as a minimum information on the context of your project, its objectives, your participants, a description of the planned activities, and do address the expected results and potential for long-term benefits. Please uncheck this section carefully and make sure that this information corresponds with the information that you've already put into your application form. And also use this opportunity to check that all the information on the participating organisations underneath is correct. And this is obviously the applicant organisations, the hosting organisations, and any consortium partners, if they're applicable there. And if any changes need to be made, this can either be done in the participating organisations section of the application form or on the participant portal. So once that summary is complete, we can move on to the annexes section. So the compulsory annexes are the signed declaration of honour, and that's compulsory for everybody who is sending in an application form. And only if you're applying on behalf of a UK mobility consortium, you'll also have to annex the mandates for your UK consortium partners. And there'll be a download available on this screen if you do select that you're part of a consortium. So the Declaration of Honour is this first box here. So you can download it using that button that we're hovering over there. And this is your organisation's statement that all the information in the application is correct to the best of your knowledge. So you can see the declaration there. This is also a statement that there's no conflict of interest and that you'll take part in the dissemination and exploitation activities if required. It also expresses a commitment to the activities you've outlined in the application form as well. So the legal representative of the applicant organisation must print this declaration, read it carefully, complete it by hand, and sign it as well. So please note here that the national ID and the organisation stamp are not required for the UK for vet applicants. The signed declaration then needs to be scanned and attached as an annex before the application form is submitted. So you just click the Add Declaration of Honour, select your document, and then you can upload it. Do note that your project application will be deemed ineligible without the declaration, so please don't forget that. Please also make sure that the date is before or it's on the submission deadline. The mandate template can also be downloaded here too if you do select consortium. So the information in the mandate template is taken directly from the information on the participating organisations section. So if any of the information is incorrect, this will then need to be amended here or on the participant portal. Mandates need to be signed and dated in original as well by the partner organisation and the applicant. So electronic or scanned signatures will not be accepted for either the declaration or the mandate templates. You can also, on this screen, attach any other relevant annexes. This can be things like training needs analysis, which could be good supporting information if you're planning on hosting a training activity, and a sample work programme. A hint and tip here is just to keep this bit concise. So we expect all the information that is key to the quality and content of your project to be included within the main body of the application form and not just put as an annex. So once you've uploaded all your annexes that you would like, we can now move on to the last section, which is the checklist. So basically on this bit, you just need to make sure that you tick each box and that you have done everything. This can be used as a prompt before you submit your application, and it's just to ensure that your application is eligible. Read the section as carefully as possible to ensure that all information and annexes that are applicable to your project are included in the application form. Also, do read that data protection notice because that is important. So just underneath the checklist on the left-hand side, there are 4 subheadings. So the 2 most important are firstly the guidelines. This can basically just be a really useful resource when filling out the application form and can offer further guidance if it's needed. And then the second most important one is the sharing. So with this new application form, the European Commission has decided to allow it to be shared with others if you wish. So this is on a read basis only at the moment and can only be shared with another user with an EU login as well. This can be useful for projects to allow more than one person to contribute fully to the application form. So now that we have completed our application form, here are some more general hints and tips just to help you complete your application form. So first of all, do read all our guidance and ensure that you're aware of all the eligibility criteria for your type of project and the award criteria it will be assessed against. The deadline that is mentioned in the application form is Brussels time. Don't forget that. So please note that the form needs to be submitted online by 11 AM UK time on the deadline day. We advise you to leave plenty of time in completing your application and submitting it online before the deadline in case of any unexpected technical difficulties. Ensure you're connected to the internet at all times while completing the application, and do download the completed PDF version for your own records using that PDF button down on the bottom left there. Please ensure that all the information is correct in the PDF too. When you're ready, you can press the submit button, which is that button there. And if the submission is successful, the submission summary should update with the submission ID. And we advise you to save a copy, just the final copy, to evidence the successful submission, just in case of any queries around that. If there are any technical issues preventing the form from being submitted and you're unable to submit the application, you should follow the alternative submission procedure. And this is outlined in the guide for applicants. So this asks you to take a screenshot of the submission summary page demonstrating that the web form could not be submitted. And then you just have to email this along with your application and any annexes that you've got to the UK National Agency within 2 hours of the official deadline. So that is 1 p.m. UK time. Lastly, please be advised that applicants cannot make any changes to their grant application after that submission deadline. So now I can hand back to Daniela, who will talk you through the rest of the presentation today.
Thank you. We will continue with after the submission eligibility check. Once we have received your application, we do some preliminary checks on your application. Your application will not be deemed eligible and will not go forward to assessment if it does not meet any of the eligibility criteria specified in the Programme Guide for Key Action 1 VET Mobility Projects. These are on pages 52 and 54. I have put some examples on this slide, but remember that this is not the full list. For example, your application won't be eligible if your planned activities are not eligible under Key Action 1 VET. For example, you submit a Key Action 1 VET application to send primary school teachers to France so they can learn French to teach primary school children. Or if you submit 2 applications as a single UK applicant. Though you can submit one application as a single applicant and a different one as the lead of a national UK consortium. Your application won't go through to quality of assessment if your organisation as applicant has no legal personality in the UK. In the programme guide, it is stated that an applicant must be any public or private organisation or its subsidiary and branch active in the field of VET or the lead of a national VET consortium. Please be aware that if you apply, you will have to be able to evidence that your VET organisation is legally registered in the UK and has a separate legal personality, which means there is a legal distinction between the owner and the business. And obviously your application won't be eligible if you submit it after 11 a.m. on the 5th of February 2019. Please make sure that you read the programme guide and the national agency guidance available on our website for further details on the eligibility requirements before you submit your application. Once the national agency is happy that your application is eligible, you will arrange it. It will arrange for it to be assessed by external experts from a qualitative point of view against the award criteria published on page 55 of the programme. You can see the 3 award criteria on the slide, and an application can score a maximum of 100 points. In order to be eligible to be awarded funding, an application must score a minimum of 60 points, but also at least half of the maximum points in each of the award criteria. Each criterion has sub-points which you need to really pay attention to, so please read more about these on the programme guide and our guide for applicants. As explained at the beginning of this webinar, the inclusion of ErasmusPRO activities, mobilities of 3 months to 12 months, will be assessed under the 3 award criteria. Please know that as part of the assessment process, the national agency will also check that the requested budget is in line with the funding rules set out in Part B of the programme guide. If these rules are not respected, your requested budget may be reduced. During the qualitative assessment process, applications will also be assessed against other relevant areas. Applicants will need to comply with the exclusion criteria, which can be found in the 2019 Programme Guide. These are situations such as being bankrupt or participating in criminal activities. An applicant will be excluded from participating in call for proposals or will be rejected from the award procedure if it is found in one of the situations described in the criteria. The selection criteria. These are the operational capacity and financial capacity. In terms of operational capacity, applicants need to demonstrate they have the capacity to successfully deliver Erasmus Plus projects and administer them in accordance with the grant agreement and the 2019 Programme Guide. The assessment of organizational capacity will consider elements like the roles of staff involved in delivering the planned projects and the past history of the applicant in delivering EU-funded projects. An outcome of this analysis may be that the UK National Agency may limit the number of live projects an organisation manages at any one time if it doesn't evidence sufficient organisational capacity to successfully deliver them. In terms of financial capacity, as you know, Erasmus Plus projects are co-funded and Erasmus Plus grants may not cover all costs. Project must be delivered and reported using only a pre-financing payment or an advance. Therefore, applicants must have stable and sufficient sources of funding to complete the project. Note, however, that the National Agency doesn't complete a financial capacity check on public bodies and international organisations where the grant request doesn't exceed €60,000. However, grant applications over €750,000, with the exception of public sector bodies and international organisations, must be accompanied by the most recent audit report produced by an external auditor. Finally, when planning your project, remember that each project financed by the EU is entitled to receive only one grant from the EU budget to any one beneficiary. In cases where organisations are also receiving funding from other sources to deliver similar activities, it is the responsibility of the applicant to ensure they remain compliant with the relevant funding rules, including those in relation to double funding, which are detailed in Part C of the Programme Guide. The Erasmus Plus National Agency will be validating your organisation and also your partner organisations. This is a separate process to the assessment of your application. Therefore, the fact that your organisation has been validated does not automatically imply a successful outcome for your application. During the validation process, the National Agency will check whether all the information you have put into the participant portal is complete and correct. You will check whether the required legal and financial forms have been uploaded, as well as the supporting documents. More information about this can be found in Part C of the Programme Guide. Your partners will also need to be validated by their national agencies. Please know that organisations that are not valid cannot take part in Erasmus Plus funded projects. If you or your partners cannot provide the correct and fully completed documents during the validation process, there may be significant delays to the processing of your application, and the national agency may even have to withdraw its offer of funding if your application is successful. Your budget. As stated earlier, there is no maximum budget for Key Action Bond vet mobility projects. However, the budget requested must be realistic and well justified within the application. We like to ensure that you are clear about the budget section. Therefore, this slide contains some repetition. Some key points to remember about the budget. There are unit costs contributions and actual costs contributions. With unit costs, the funding is automatically calculated depending on the unit. This can be the number of participants for a certain duration or a set cost per distance travelled, for example. Budget headings using unit costs are travel, organisational support, individual support and linguistic support where eligible, as we've seen. Funding for actual costs is obviously based on the real cost of the item of service, but only a certain percentage of the cost will be covered. Budget headings using actual costs are special needs support up to 100% and exceptional costs. As I've said earlier, under exceptional costs, a percentage of the actual total cost will be funded via the Erasmus Plus budget, except in relation to participants with fewer opportunities. It is important to know that any request for financial support to cover special needs support and exceptional costs must be clearly explained in the application form. The assessor will not assume anything in relation to these costs and can recommend cutting them from the budget unless adequately justified. With regards to submission, you should ensure that all annexes are attached before attempting submission. We recommend that, where possible, you scan different documents together into a single file. You need to check that the annexes are within the maximum 10 megabyte size. If you still experience problems with attaching annexes after having checked these aspects, you can email them to ErasmusPlus@ecoris.com before the deadline of 11 a.m. On 5th of February, clearly stating which application form they relate to by providing the application hash code, and also tell us your organization's details and project name. However, please only do this as an exception and ensure you have followed all the available guidance first. You will need to ensure that you are connected to the internet in order to submit your application. If you experience technical problems which you are unable to resolve, you need to follow the alternative submission procedure, which we have just talked about, but please be mindful of the errors which we cannot accept as errors. You will need to ensure that all annexes are attached before attempting submission. The most important annexes which are mandatory are the Declaration of Honor. It needs to be printed, completed in full, and hand-signed by the project's legal representative named within the application. As you have seen during the presentation, this is found at the end of the actual web form. This is the most important annex, as without this, we are not able to forward the application to assessment. This document will be a PDF file, so please ensure that you have the most up-to-date version of Adobe and are able to download this. And again, grant applications over €750,000, with the exception of public sector bodies and international organizations, must be accompanied by the most recent audit report produced by an external auditor. So, before we conclude, some key points for you to remember. Before and while you complete your application, refer to the Commission's documents. First of all, the 2019 Programme Guide and the National Agency's Guide for Applicants, and other guidance documents as available on our website. If you have applied before, don't forget to review the feedback you have received from us, as this will include key areas of improvement which will enhance your chances of submitting a good quality application. Ensure correct options are selected on the application so that important sections aren't deleted. As we've said while looking through the application form, double-check that the budget you request is accurate and well justified. Provide relevant answers to the questions in the application, but remember that there is a character limit on many of the sections. Get someone else to proofread your application and annexes, perhaps against the published award criteria. Leave enough time for completing and submitting your application before the deadline on the 5th of February 2019. So to conclude, I'd like to remind you of the support of the UK National Agency will be offering in the run-up to the 5th of February deadline for applications to be submitted under Key Action 1 Mobility for Vet Learners and Staff. We're holding a live interactive webinar in January 2019 to answer questions on Key Action 1 Vet and also Adult Education Mobility. We'll offer key topics for discussion and participants will be able to ask relevant questions. To register, please visit our Events and Webinars webpage under Events. A detailed guide to applications on how to fill out and submit the application form will shortly be made available on our Erasmus Plus website. There is a guide for each action type that we manage, so make sure you check the correct one. If you haven't done so already, please sign up to our newsletter, as this provides all the most up-to-date information about the call and the Erasmus Plus program. On our website, you can also find other important information and key documents to support you with completing your application. We also have a helpline where our team is available to answer your questions about your Key Action 1 application. And finally, we're offering project outline feedback sessions where we provide tailored feedback on your project idea. The form for you to complete will be available on the Key Action 1 VET Mobility Apply for Funding page, and we can give feedback on all forms submitted by the 20th of January. Thank you for your attention. If you have any queries, please contact us via the ErasmusPlus@ecoris.com email address or the number on the screen. As said, our team is also available every day from Monday to Friday to answer any queries you may have via the ErasmusPlus@ecoris.com inbox or our helpline. Do also keep an eye on the Erasmus Plus website for news and further guidance. We hope you've found the session useful today, and we wish you luck with your future applications.